Hi everyone, if you're new to the channel, my name is Christine from These Succulent Buddies, and I talk all about succulent care tips, how to grow them, multiply them, and how to treat certain problems that we may have while growing them. Please like and subscribe so you could be notified whenever I upload new videos on this channel. So today we're going to be talking about my succulent over here. This succulent's name is graptopetalum subspecies bernalens. I'm going to show you how I multiplied this succulent from just one. I started with one, the size of this one right here. Now I do have a full pot of them, and as well as another full, almost full pot right here. And like I said, I started with just one. Now let's talk about how did I turn this into all of these. I really did start with one, and about 2.5 years later, this is how much I have of them. Every year, I do what is called propagation from cuttings and beheading, and this is exactly what we're gonna do in this video. I will show you step by step what I do, and then care tips of what to do with them afterwards. So the question is, how do we propagate this succulent? How do we go from one to a full pot of it? Well, first, number one is a lot of patience. Number two, we propagate by propagating their leaves. These are some of the succulent leaves that I have taken from my graptopetalum subspecies bernalens here in different stages. This one is a baby that's still growing from the leaf. This one has grown roots first and then the baby afterwards. This is one that has already calloused that we're still waiting on a baby for, and this one is one that has grown about 2 babies there, and the leaf has already been shed. If you want a faster way of propagating and growing them, the best thing to do is to take cuttings from the plant itself when you have this many. Even if you only have one, what you want to do is you want to behead like this stem right here. You want to behead by just cutting right underneath the leaves and leaving about at least 2 inches of stem so we can plant it in the succulent soil like so. So you just cut it like that, and once you've cut, what you want to do with this end right here is you want to let this callus for about 2 to 3 days before you plant it in very well dry, well draining soil. Now you can also, I don't really callus all of my succulents. I just kind of stick them into the soil if I know that my soil is completely dry, and just make sure that it does not get wet as long as that cut right there has not callus. But the best way to do this to avoid rot is to callus them for about 2 to 3 days before planting them in dry soil. So now we're just gonna keep cutting until this is all bare, and we will plant our cuttings and put them in a new pot, and then we will talk care tips, okay? Now we have a pot here of basically really bare stems. What you see here is, you see these open cuts right here on these stems. You want to make sure that none of these open cuts get wet until they have calloused off. I would give them about 2 weeks in a bright shaded area, actually for the next few months until they start growing babies, in a bright shaded area where they get a lot of bright light. But just make sure that these open cuts do not get wet, or your stems could rot and then you won't grow any more babies, okay? Do not water for at least 1 to 2 weeks, and if you do, you do not deep water like you normally would if you do have a full pot just like this. This will not need as much water as a pot like this because it does not have it doesn't have leaves to absorb a lot of water, but those babies do grow really quickly. So now we have all these babies in front of us, and we are now going to put some cinnamon on each end. If you watch my older videos, I always say that cinnamon has natural antifungal properties that kill certain types of candida in the soil, and I like to use it, just an extra protective barrier on my cut succulent stems. It also helps it dry faster, and some people actually say that it works really well as a rooting hormone. So here we go. Let's just put cinnamon on each of these ends. Here I have a pot ready, a terracotta pot with very dry and well draining soil. And we're now going to plant our succulent cuttings that we took from our graptopetalum subspecies bernalense. If you guys want to see what's in my soil mix, please refer to episode number 18, Succulent Care Tips for Beginners. I do have my recipe for my soil mix there over here, which has actually worked pretty well for me in the past about 3 years of growing succulents. So if you guys want to see that, episode number 18, guys, Succulent Care Tips for Beginners. Right, care tips, guys, when you're planting succulent cuttings. Like I said, callus for 2 to 3 days before you plant in very well dry, well draining soil. Or if you are confident, or if you're growing your succulents indoors and you know that your soil is not going to get wet anytime soon, then you can simply plant them as is, but just make sure that you do not water these succulents, okay? The number one rule of thumb when planting succulent cuttings, guys, is not to water until your succulents have roots. Now, what I do with that, it usually takes between 3 to 4 weeks or longer, depending on the succulents that you are planting, before they grow new roots. So my number one rule, no roots, no water. As long as there are no roots on your succulents, they have no way of absorbing water. So if they can't absorb water and then you water them because they don't have roots, what happens is these stems right here, they just end up sitting in wet soil, which could eventually cause them to rot. So no roots, no water. Remember that with succulent cuttings. Now, some people do get away with watering them after about 2 weeks to encourage root growth. I have tried it. For some of my succulents, yes, they did grow roots, but it still took about 3 to 4 weeks before they grew roots, and some of them actually ended up rotting because they were sitting in wet soil without any roots to absorb any of the water. So, you know, just to stay on the safe side, it is better to plant these succulent cuttings as is and do not water until they have roots. I'm sorry if I have to keep repeating that, but it is really important if you want your succulents over here to stay alive. Now, after about 3 to 4 weeks, or whenever they have finally rooted for you, what you do is you water them, but you don't water them as much as you would normally water a full pot of succulents like these. Why? Because they do not have as much roots yet to absorb the water. So you just kind of want to lightly water the soil until it is moist but not wet. And you want to water maybe every 3 to 4 days. Wait until the soil dries out and then water again. And as they grow more roots, and you know, you will start seeing the leaves finally fill back up with water, you could water more and more. In the process of rooting them, you do not want them in direct sun. You only want to put them in a bright shaded area where they get filtered sun or morning sun pretty much at the most while they're rooting, because they are vulnerable at this point to sunburn, and they may just die if they are exposed to too much heat. Okay, the best time to plant succulent cuttings is when the temperatures are between about maybe 71 to 82. They do have a better chance of rooting at a lower temp, which is about, you know, the 70s, but it doesn't mean that they won't root at like 82 or 83 degrees Fahrenheit. They still will, but it will just take a little bit longer for you. Okay, so here we go. Our pot right here is now filled with the cuttings. I actually feel like it's a little bit small for this, but Some of those bottom leaves, do not be afraid, guys. Some of those bottom leaves you will lose in the process of them trying to grow new roots, because they will be drinking from their bottom leaves at this point. They're gonna start getting wrinkly, and they're gonna kind of look like, see these bottom leaves over here? Some of your bottom leaves will look like this, and you lose about 2 to 3 bottom leaves while they grow roots. But it's okay. As soon as they grow roots and you start watering them, use the soak and dry method, but just enough to moisten the soil, okay? Do not water it all the way. They will slowly plump back up and drink water until they are stable. And then when they are, you know, nice and plump and full again, you can then start introducing them to morning sun. And then after that, about every 2 to 3 days, add another hour or 2 until they are used to full sun. If you are growing them under grow lights, you can put them under the grow lights now, just maybe not too close. They will be just fine. They should grow really well from there, but sunlight outdoors is still best. So I hope this video helped you somehow. If you live in the tropics, it is now the rainy season. The weather has cooled off. If you can provide some type of cover up top for your succulents, this is the perfect time to take succulent cuttings, because our weather has started cooling off. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Happy planting, guys, and let's chop your succulents. So hopefully in 6 months you can have more. I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you.